Namo Buddhaya, Jai Bhim, and welcome to our Dhamma discussion this evening. As we always do, we will start with observing Panchasila. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, dhammang saranang gacchami, sanghang saranang gacchami, dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami, tatyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, tatyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, tatyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu miccācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Surameraya majjapama daccana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu. As I always do, before I start the Dhamma discussion, there are a few points that I would like to make. Firstly, all the Dhamma that I'm explaining to you, I have taken from the oldest Tripitaka in the world, which is kept at the British Library in London. And British Library is less than 20 miles from our Vihara. So I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to have access to that Tripitaka and read the contents of it. Now this Tripitaka is over 2,000 years old. It has been written down 456 years after Lord Buddha passed away at Alulena Rajamahavihara in Matula village in Kegol district in Sri Lanka. There's a very interesting story behind this Tripitaka and how it came to London. And towards the end of the Dhamma discussion, I will tell you that story. So some of the Dhamma points that I am explaining to you might differ from what you have learned already from other Tripitakas or Visuddhimagga or any other book. If that is the case, please don't develop an anger or resentment against it, or please don't come to argue with me. Just practice the principle that Lord Buddha explained in Kalama Sutra. In Kalama Sutra, Lord Buddha said, don't either believe me or disbelieve me. Just listen to me carefully, collect all the facts that I give you, take it home, analyze it using your intelligence and wisdom, go through it several times, and at the end of the day, if you think it's right, you can take it, make use of it, and you can get good results out of it. And if you think it's wrong, just leave it out and carry on with whatever you are doing, but don't have an anger or resentment against it. So I kindly request all of you to do the same. Now, uh, uh, before I proceed from where I stopped, I will quickly uh, recap what we discussed so far. Now, in Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, at the beginning, Lord Buddha says, I'll go a little fast here at the same time because now you're familiar with it, most of you. So, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, at the beginning, Lord Buddha says, uh, Kubbe Ananusutesu Dhammesu. That means I'm going to explain to you Dhamma you haven't heard before. Then he says, Chakku Mudapadi, Jnana Mudapadi, Panya Udapadi, Vidya Udapadi, Aloka Udapadi. Meaning, I got the vision of Dhamma, I got the knowledge of Dhamma, I got the wisdom of Dhamma, I got the science of Dhamma, and I got the light of Dhamma. In other words, I found the way out of this, the darkness, which is the 31 planes, into the light, which is the Nibbana. Then he says, in order to understand Dhamma, there are three things that first you have to do. You have to come out of Kamasukallikanu Yogo, Attakilamatanu Yogo, and you have to come to Majjhima Patipada. So Kamasukallikanu Yogo is living a life of luxury, what uh, Lord Buddha did as Prince Siddhartha up to the age of 29. Then Attakilamatanu Yoga is giving unnecessary suffering to the body, thinking that that way one will be able to develop his wisdom and understand how this universe works. And that's what he did for 6 years as a Bodhisattva while he was doing the Arya Parvation. Parvation is the research, and he explained that in detail in the Arya Parvation Sutra, which is a very long sutra. Then he says you have to come to Majjhima Patipada. So Majjhima Patipada does not mean middle path. Majjhima Patipada means Majji means getting drunk of Raga Dvesha Moha. Ma means completely eradicating. And Patipada is the path or the system or the method. Then he says Majjhima Patipada is described as the noble eightfold path. The eightfolds are Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, Samma Vacha, Samma Kammanta, Samma Ajiva, Samma Vayama, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi. So Samma Ditti means Sam means Raga Dvesha Moha, Ma means completely eradicating, Ditti means the vision. Uh, so the person who understands Dhamma and comes to Sammadhi, he said that person has attained the first level of enlightenment known as Sothapanna. Sota means the Nirvana Marga, Apanna means arrive. So he has completed the first fold of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is Sammadhi. Now he has got the vision, he knows the path. Now from this point onwards, he has to walk the path to complete the other three levels of enlightenment. Then he says, in order to arrive at Sammadhi, you have to understand the Four Noble Truths. That is noble truth of suffering, noble truth of the reason for suffering, noble truth of out of suffering, and the noble truth of the way out of suffering. Then he says, to understand the Four Noble Truths, there are four things that you have to do. First one, Kalyana Mitra Sevana, that is associating a friend who is capable of explaining correct Dhamma to you, which will help you to eradicate Raga Desha Moha and come to Sammadhi and become Sotapanna. And the second one is Siri Sadharma Sravana. You listen to that person and learn Dhamma. That the Lord Buddha learning Dhamma, Lord Buddha explained that he gave a special Pali word for Magadi word rather called Janato. So you listen to Dhamma and become Janato. Then those two things you need the help of the Kalyana Mitra. Then the next two things you have to do by yourself. Third one is Yoniso Manasikara. What you learn by listening to Kalyana Mitra, the Dhamma that you listen, you have to analyze it using your intelligence and wisdom, go through it over and over again, and comprehend the Dhamma. So for comprehending, he used a special called Pastato. So a person who has a Janato and Pastato of Dhamma has come to Samadhi, has become Samadhi and Sotapanna. He has seen the Nirvana Marga, he knows the path. He knows that the Nirvana Marga is the Noble Eightfold Path, and he knows what the Noble Eightfold Paths are, he knows how to practice them. It's only a question of starting the practice now, what he has to do. So then we started discussing each item in this summary. Firstly, we had a brief discussion on the first noble truth, the noble truth of suffering. We discussed them under several headings that Lord Buddha explained. Firstly, we explained 11 types of suffering that people suffered as a result of sanna, but they were not aware of the reason. So without knowing the reason, they could not have been able to eliminate them or eradicate them. Then we discussed Panchaskandha and Panchopadana. Panchaskandha is Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana. And the Arahat, a person who is not Arahat, the Prasabjana person who is not Sothapanna will do Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana all the time. Every time Rupa Vedana Sanya comes to his mind, he will do Sankara and Vijnana. But the Arhat person, when the Rupa Vedana Sanya comes to his mind, instead of doing Sankara, he does Visankara and then produces Prajna, the wisdom. Now the Prutabjana person is producing Vijnana all the time, which is called foolishness in English, because there's no English word for that. But it gives, maybe 25% of the meaning of the word Vijnana. It's a kind of foolishness. It makes you to do foolish things. In other words, makes you to do things involving more and more Ragadesha Mohan. And the Arhat person, instead of doing Sankara, he does Visankara, the opposite of Sankara, and that produces Prajna. Prajna is wisdom. So when the Rupa Vedana Sanya comes to his mind, instead of constructing a thought with Raga Dvesha Moha, he will construct a thought with Maitri Karuna Mudita Upekka. So that will have the opposite effect, the good effect, the positive effect. So we discussed all that. Then we discussed another aspect of suffering, which is dukkha dukkha, sankara dukkha, and viparinama dukkha. So that's where we stopped last Saturday. I think as far as the first noble truth is concerned, that's all I would like to cover now up to that point. And on the second round, we will discuss it in more detail with lots of examples for you to understand and comprehend. Now, when Lord Buddha first delivered the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, it took him 21 days to ensure that all five disciples, the Panchavagya Bhikkhu, comprehended Dhamma and became Sotapanna. So even though it's a short summary, it has the essence of entire Buddha Dhamma. It covers Buddha Dhamma from A to Z, especially everything that one needs to know to become Sotapanna is included in there. Plus the summary of how to complete Sakuddagami and Anagami and Arhat also explained here. But the meditation techniques that one has to follow to become Sakuddagami, Anagami, and Arhat are not explained in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, but they are explained in detail in Mahasatara Satipatthana Sutra, which we will discuss briefly later. And then how to practice them, the practical side he has explained in Dveda Vitakka Sutra and Vitakka Samsana Sutra, which are very short sutras. Now, Mahasatara Satipatthana Sutra is a very long sutra, which explains so many meditation techniques, but he mainly recommends four. The first one is Maitri Bhavana, the loving kindness meditation, in a slightly more advanced way than we are practicing now. This is the basic way of we practice, but we will go into the advanced stages later as we go on. So that's where we stop. So for the time being, The details that we discussed on the first noble truth of suffering, is sufficient. But on the second round, we will discuss it in more detail. Now, today I want to move on to the second noble truth of suffering, which is the cause of suffering or the reason for suffering. So, under this heading, I want to mainly explain five Dhamma points. Firstly, Lord Buddha explained the main reason for suffering, the main cause of suffering, or the main reason for suffering is tanha, and he divided tanha into three main headings or main categories: kama tanha, bhava tanha, and vibhava tanha. Then he explained two other theories that affect kama tanha, bhava tanha, and vibhava tanha, and he called them. The first one is called aswada, adinava, visarana, and the last one is anicca, dukkha, anatta. So today I want to cover these five. So let's start with the tanha. Lord said the reason for suffering is tanha, and in Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra he said kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha. So let's look at what kama tanha is. Kama tanha is our desire to satisfy our mind through the six senses, through the information that we get through the six senses. Now, to simplify it, in some books it says satisfying the six senses, saying that it's okay, but as long as you understand, you cannot satisfy the six senses. It's the information that you take through the six senses satisfies the mind. It's the mind that enjoys or suffers. The six senses, all they are doing is taking the information and passing it on to the mind. So kama tanha is our desire to satisfy the six senses, if we put it that way. Then bhava tanha. Now kama tanha, every Pruthagjana person has kama tanha, and he doesn't know that there's something terribly wrong. He doesn't know, so he does it all the time. All his life is entirely devoted for that. He lives to satisfy kama tanha. If you look at it, if you think about it, from the childhood, a child is given education, child is sent to Montessori or nursery school, whatever you call it. Then is sent to school, private school, high school, university, bachelor's, master's, PhD, all these qualifications he gets in order to get a job, and earn good money, and buy material things to satisfy the six senses. That's what people live for. And people think that is the right thing to do. So that Lord Buddha said that's completely wrong. That is the path that leads you, makes you to continue your birth and rebirth process in this samsara and causes all this suffering for you. And Lord Buddha explained in detail this suffering. Now, some of the suffering that human beings undergo, we will discuss it in more detail later. And when we come to that, I want to explain to you the immense amount of suffering the inferior beings undergo in the animal kingdom, then the ghost kingdom, inferior ghost kingdom, and the hell itself. And when you hear this, there's a sutra called Nivaya Sutra. Lord Buddha has explained it. It's also called Devadutta Sutra. And if you can read that sutra and understand what it's saying, it is mind-boggling because it can be so disturbing as to understand what amount of suffering those inferior beings living in these four hells are undergoing for billions and trillions of years. Because if one goes there, it's almost impossible to come out of it because one cannot commit wholesome deeds and earn merit there because there's no opportunity for that, and those inferior beings living in the four hells have no developed mind like human beings or the superior beings to understand Dhamma and understand the difference between the right and the wrong. So that is Kama Tantra, the desire to satisfy six senses. Then the person who has understood Dhamma and come to Sammadhisthi and Sothapanna, that person will know the danger of going down this road, living to satisfy the six senses. So he will gradually practice the Noble Eightfold Path and gradually reduce the amount of the pressure that he is giving to these six senses. He cannot do it immediately, straight away, overnight. He will do it gradually. And as he goes on, then his wisdom will develop and he will become Sakudagami and Nagami and Arhat. And once he comes to Arhat level, he will not do Sankara in order to satisfy his mind. He will feel happy all the time by doing Visankara. Visankara, we will discuss it in more detail later. Arhat person is the person who feels happy all the time and no sadness, no unhappiness, no suffering comes to his mind. So that's the objective, that's the final target of every human being living in this world according to Buddhism. So that is Kama Tanha briefly. Then we go to Bhava Tanha. Bhava Tanha means a person may have been able to give up Kama Tanha. If a person gives up Kama Tanha completely, he becomes Anagami. He has completed the third level of enlightenment. But still there are some people who are Anagami. They still not willing to go to Nibbana. They still want to stay in Brahmaloka. There are two types of Brahmaloka. Anagamis can go, and they are good Brahmaloka. They are the Rupavachara and Arupavachara. Rupavachara means they have a very, uh, how can I put it, not a very solid body, some type of body, but mainly the mind. Arupavachara does not have a body, only the mind. So their suffering is very, very minimal. And once they go there, they think that is very good. They enjoy it very much and they try and stick to it without going to Nibbana for a long time. So that's Bhavatantra. So they like to be, even if they don't have Kamatantra, they could have Bhavatantra. A person who has Kamatantra has Bhavatantra anyway, because he wants to satisfy the six senses. And to satisfy the six senses, he wants to be in a plane or in a loka that gives him the six senses to satisfy the six senses or satisfy his mind through the six senses. So that's Bhavatanha. Bhavatanha means one desire to be born in this 31 place and not ready to go to Nibbana because still he has to develop enough wisdom to understand how good the Nibbana would be, how much better it would be compared to Brahmaloka or any other loka below that. The Bhavatanha, Vibhavatanha. Vibhavatanha means the person who has Vibhavatanha is an atheist. He doesn't believe in any Dhamma. He doesn't believe in the previous life. He doesn't believe in the future life after death. And he doesn't believe in karma. He doesn't believe in wholesome deeds and merits or unwholesome deeds and sins. So basically what he believes is life is just a one-off and the purpose of life is to satisfy the six senses. And in order to satisfy the six senses the way he wants money. So he will do everything possible to earn money and satisfy the six senses in a crazy way, buying so many cars, so many ships, so many cruise liners, so many aircraft, so many helicopters, whatever he feels like buying. And in order to find the resources to do that, he is prepared to do anything, even if he has to murder 10 million people, he wouldn't hesitate. He will murder the 10 million people and buy the aircraft or whatever he wants to buy. So if I may say so, between you and me and these four walls, the 1% of the world who are ruling the world today, they all fall into this category, Vibhavasanna. They don't believe in any number or any religion. They just want to make money as much as possible and enjoy themselves. And they don't understand numbers. And they don't realize that the aswada, the mentally fabricated pleasure, we are going to talk about in detail later. And it's just a myth, and it's an illusion. And it's taking them into deeper and deeper into trouble. So that's Kama Tanha, Bhava Tanha, and Vibhava Tanha. Now let's see why people have Kama Tanha. Because lot of people have Kama Tanha. Because people, when they do Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara, they enjoy a pleasure which is the mentally fabricated pleasure. Lord Buddha said, when you do Rupa Vedana Sankara, there is no real pleasure that you can enjoy in this world. If you do Visankara only, you can have real pleasure. So the pleasure that people get, Lord Buddha called it Amisasua, the pleasure one would get by committing Sankara. And by committing Visankara, the enormous pleasure one can enjoy, Lord Buddha explained it as Nirama. So we will discuss those things later. Now let's look at this Amisa Sukha. Sukha means, comfort or enjoyment. So people do this Sankara because they feel that they get the pleasure out of it, but they don't realize it is an illusion. They feel that pressure because they are either attached to that particular item, whether it's a person or an object that they are doing the sankara with. They don't realize that they are attached to that item or that form that comes to their mind or that data that comes to their central processing unit, the mind. They are attached to it with either raga or dvesha due to moha. A person has raga and dvesha because of moha, not knowing the Four Noble Truths, not knowing the correct number. If a person knows correct number, then he knows raga and dvesha, and he will try his best to gradually eradicate them. So the Sothapanna person, most of the time, he will be doing Visankara, but from time to time, because of his past habits, he will be doing Sankara as well. But majority of the time, he will be doing Sankara, and that's one of the reasons why he is not committing any serious thing which is capable of resulting in going to the four hells. He will never ever go to four hells. Lord Buddha has confirmed that in many sutras, and Ratana Sutra, especially a sutra that we all know, Lord Buddha said, Sahavastu Dasana Sampadaya, Sayastu Dhamma Jahida Bhavanti, Sakkaya Nitti Vichikichikantya, Silambatam Vahiya Chachikinti, Chatu Apaye Hichavitham. So I will briefly explain that to you. Sahavastu Dasana Sampadaya, Sayastu Dhamma Jahida Bhavanti. A person who has listened to Dhamma, understood Dhamma, and got a vision of Dhamma is a Sotapanna person. And that person will never ever go to the four hells for the rest of his samsara because he knows how what Sankara is, what the Sankara is. So he knows the outcome of committing Sankara and the Visankara. He is very scared of committing Sankara because he knows that it will eventually lead him to going to the four hells where he will get stuck and suffer for a very, very long time. So instead of doing Sankara, he will try his best to do Visankara. So majority of the time he will be doing Samkara instead of Samkara. In other words, instead of constructing thoughts with Ragadesha, he will be constructing majority of the thoughts with Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upekka. Once he comes to Arahat level, that's all he will do. He will never ever commit a Samkara. So that's why Lord Buddha said, Sabbe Sankara Anichati Yada Pajnaya Pasati Asani Bindati Dukke Esamago Visuddhya. We will discuss it in detail later. The pleasure that the person gets is a mentally fabricated pleasure. Now, most people cannot understand that. Even I couldn't understand it. I heard it. But to understand it, you have to take look at lots of practical examples. I'll explain you a couple of examples today. On the second round, we will look at it in more detail. Now, once I explain these two, you can learn the principles in this explanation and apply that to your personal circumstances, the things that you do to satisfy your six senses and get pleasure, and then you can apply that principle to those pleasures that you are enjoying and test it and see whether it's a real pleasure or a mentally fabricated pleasure. I'm sure if you apply this theory correctly, you will be convinced, you will understand, you will be convinced that the pleasure what you thought was a real pleasure is a mentally fabricated pleasure. Now let me give you one example. Let's say there is an executive CEO of a company in UK, an Englishman, and also he is doing business with a company in China. That company also has a CEO, Chinese person. So after a few years, they become good friends. They are both married, and they are both of the same age. And the CEO in UK doesn't have children, so he loves dogs. He has 4 dogs in his house. He and his wife loves dogs very much. They are like his children. They sleep in their bedroom and they eat with them, they bathe with them, and so on, like family members. So one day, the Chinese CEO invites the British couple, British CEO and his wife, for a holiday in China. So the day that they arrived, they have a rest, and the following day, the Chinese couple invite the British couple to dinner. So they go to dinner with the Chinese couple, and the Chinese couple takes them to the most expensive restaurant in that town. And that's a Chinese restaurant. It's a very traditional type of Chinese restaurant. Everything is in Chinese. So the menus come, and the English couple have a look at the menu. They can only see the figures, the cost of each dish, and they were shocked to see the cost because they have never been to such an expensive restaurant. And but they can't read the menu, so they ask the Chinese executive, Chinese CEO, to order the food for them. So what the Chinese CEO asked them whether they are vegetarians or they eat meat. They said English couple says we eat meat, there's no problem. So he ordered the 4 most expensive dishes on the menu. And they are very, very expensive. Let's say in dollars, it could be $1,000 per person. It's that expensive. So the English couple was surprised, even though they are reasonably wealthy people, not multi-millionaires. They have never ever been to such an expensive restaurant, and they have never spent $1,000 on a meal, $2,000 to 2 people. But this meal is going to cost $4,000. The Englishman asked the Chineseman, why is it so expensive? And he explained that it's a very special meat and it's cooked in a very special way by a very special chef, and that is the most expensive dish in that town. And this is the most expensive and the cleanest and the best restaurant in town. So the English couple must be thinking, and they were thinking that it must be a very tasty dish. So without knowing, without realizing, they have already done Rupa Vedana Sanya and Sankara they have committed, and they have developed an attachment with this dish with raga. That's the normal reaction of a Pruthajana person. So the four dishes arrive and four people start eating. And the English couple, when they take the first bite, is so tasty. They have never tasted such tasty meat. They completely wipe out the plate. They eat everything. And they were so happy. And then they had some dessert and then they had some green tea to wash everything down. And then during the discussion, suddenly the Englishman asked the Chineseman, "What is this meat?" He says, "No, that's dog meat." Then suddenly, the mood of the English couple changes completely. They get up from the seat and start running to the toilet. And the Chinese couple is puzzled. They were wondering why. They were so happy a minute ago, a second ago. Now they are so unhappy. They are running to the toilet. So the Chinese couple got so worried. They ran after them to see what they were doing. They were vomiting everything. All the food, the meat and the rice and the tea and everything, dessert and everything they ate, they were vomiting. What happened here? Because they didn't know it was dog meat. It was tasty and they had developed a raga. They have developed an attachment with raga, with this meat. So they had a mentally fabricated pleasure. They got so much pleasure out of eating that meat. Now the same meat, after some time, once they found that it was dog meat, and this couple loved dogs so much, they couldn't imagine eating dog meat, and they suddenly developed a dvesha. Dvesha firstly against themselves for eating dog meat, and then next against the friend who was giving them dog meat, and then against the restaurant that is selling dog meat, and they couldn't bear the anger and the resentment within themselves, and they started vomiting, and they were sick for 2 days. So the number point that you have to catch here is it's the same meat, and the meat has its own natural taste. Dog meat, maybe can everything has its natural taste, but nothing, no food has the special quality of uh, generating a pleasure or a displeasure. It has its natural taste. The only good quality food has, I mean special quality, it can fill up your stomach. It can kill your hunger. It can give you relief from the hunger. That is you can see that is some kind of it's some people take the pleasure, but it's not actually a pleasure. It's a relief from suffering. That's what the food gives. But people create the pleasure or the displeasure, and it's a mentally fabricated pleasure or displeasure, depending on whether they are attached to the food with raga or dvesha. If they are attached, if they have developed an attachment, maybe most people don't realize it happens automatically, and it is done by vijnana. Because vijnana does all the wrong things to keep us going in this samsara. That's what vijnana wants to do. Vijnana wants to keep us going here. Prajna wants to take us to Nibbana. So the Prutakshana person, Vijnana is strong. So the moment they hear about this expensive meat and its taste and all that, immediately their mind, their Vijnana develops an attachment with Raga. So when they were eating it, they enjoyed it so much. It's the same meat after enjoying, after getting so much of mentally fabricated pleasure out of it. The moment they found that it was dog meat, and that the mental condition changes completely, and they developed dvesha immediately, and they started vomiting. So the Dhamma point here is the meat does not have a quality of creating pleasure or giving pleasure or displeasure. It's just the food. It has the quality of being able to fill up the stomach and kill the hunger or give relief from the hunger. But it does not have a quality that could create pleasure or displeasure in the person's mind. It is the condition of the mind, whether he is eating that food with the raga, in which case he will have a pleasure, mentally fabricated pleasure. If he is eating with dvesha, it will have a mentally fabricated displeasure. So here is a good example that I thought of, and you can work it out yourself. Now you can apply this example and this theory to everything that you enjoy personally in life through the data that you are taking from your eyes, from your ears, from your nose, from your tongue, from your body, and from your past memory. These are the six senses that send data to your mind, your central processing unit, and you processes them with raga based order, and you enjoy them. You enjoy food, and you enjoy music, and you enjoy watching films, and whatever. So all these things, just look at themselves. Now, this is a research that you have to do yourself, and once you do it properly, you will realize what you really thought was pleasure was not actually pleasure. There's not a real pleasure, and it's a mentally fabricated pleasure. The same pleasure the pleasure that you are getting is because you are attached to that father. And the moment that condition changes and your attachment changes from raga to dvesha, instead of getting pleasure, the same thing will be your displeasure. The same thing happens, another example that I explained to you between the father and the son. Now, son, when the son was 10 years old, he was very obedient, doing the schoolwork well, doing everything to the expectations of the father. And father was so happy and he was attached to the son with raga. Every time when the son comes from school, he feels so happy. And if the son is late coming from school, he gets worried and starts panicking because he's attached to the son with raga. But once the son reaches 18, 20 years of age and start doing his own thing and not listening to the father, then father's attachment from raga to changes dvesha. So when he has the dvesha attachment, every time when he thinks of his son or when he sees his son, he feels angry and unhappy and so on. So the number point here is what you have to understand is what you enjoy as pleasure is not really a pleasure. It's a mentally fabricated pleasure. Now, this mentally fabricated pleasure has several problems that puts you into trouble. Now, firstly, this mentally fabricated pleasure, uh, because it's not a real pleasure, it will, firstly, it will change to dvesha and give you problems. And secondly, you cannot maintain it forever. Sorry. Secondly, to maintain it, immense, you will have to go to immense trouble to earn the resources to maintain this pleasure. Because you can never satisfy if you enjoy eating food, you will try different types of food, different types of restaurants, food in different countries, made in different ways. You will try different recipes. No matter how much taste that you give to your tongue, and your mind will never be satisfied with it. It will keep asking more and more and more. You can never satisfy it. That's one downside of the mentally fabricated pleasure. The other one is to give these so many different types of material items to satisfy this mentally fabricated pleasure. One has to find the resources. To find the resources, one has to either work very, very hard and earn the money in the present economy, the way the economic system works, or one has to do wrong things to earn the money. So as you can see, the top 1% in the world, mostly, they are prepared to do anything to earn money. They have billions and still they are not satisfied because more money they get, more their needs are. Their needs to satisfy these six senses become more and more and more. So they keep running after money and they are prepared to do anything, including murder and robbery and looting and whatever. And all the problems that people are causing in the world ever since the world has come to existence is all due to this mentally fabricated pleasure that people are seeking. It's like running after a rainbow. It can never satisfy them because it's not a real pleasure. It's a mentally fabricated one. So they will keep running and running and running. Finally, they will get so tired and die. So by the time they die, and they would have accumulated loads of uh, unwholesome qualities by committing unwholesome thoughts and deeds, and then they, at the same time, they would have accumulated loads of sins, and as a result of that, they will go straight to the four hells. Now, Lord Jesus Christ explained it beautifully. And don't get me wrong, I'm not mixing up Christianity with Buddhism, as they would say. Lord Jesus Christ was the Buddhist monk who is the Bodhisattva. So, Lord Jesus Christ said it's easier for a camel to go through a needle hole than a rich man to go to heaven. That has a very deep meaning. It's the same thing because rich means they're running after majority. But there are exceptions. I know some rich people, very rich people in Sri Lanka, they do good things all the time. They give more than 75% of their earnings to charities. They do various charitable activities, feed the poor people, and so on. They are nowhere near rich as people, the rich people as the top 1% in the world. But in Sri Lanka, they are wealthy and they give most of their wealth for they use their most of wealth for good causes. There are people like that who understand them. But majority of the rich people, they don't understand them. And more they get, more they want. The greedier they become, and more trouble they fall into. So it's more difficult, especially in the present world, what we call so-called modern world. Richer a person, harder for him to understand them and protect himself from the four hells in his next birth. So that's one aspect of one problem of this, another problem of this mentally fabricated pleasure. Another one is even one can afford to buy all the meals that he wants, and he will still not be satisfied because Lord Buddha said there's another universal law called anicca, dukkha, anatta. Anicca means we cannot keep anything in the way we want because things are subject to change. And if we develop a tanha with raga, over with any of those things, there for the word tanha, Lord Buddha used a special word called paticca. He says if we paticca ourselves to anything anicca, we will end up with dukkha, dukkha and anatta. So if he said everything in the world is anicca. There's nothing in the world that you can keep the way you want. To understand that, you can think of that example I explained about father and the son. Son was, father could control the son for a limited period, but after that, his control will be lost. So once the control is lost, if he doesn't know Dhamma, then he will be suffering. He is getting angry and he will be suffering. And that will lead him to anatta. Anatta means it will desert him in the life. It will help him. It will need what he needs. In other words, vijnana to proceed his cycle of birth and rebirth and not help him to go in the right route, correct route to the noble eightfold path. So let's look at the time now. So the time is almost up. I think I will stop there. Now to understand this, it's very important to understand these two concepts. these two universal laws, the Aswada, Adinava, Nisarana, and Anicca Dukkha Ananda. Now, Aswada, Adinava, Nisarana, if a person realizes that everything, get a reasonable knowledge of Aswada, Adinava, Nisarana, and realizes that this running after Aswada is the wrong path, getting away from it is the right path. Once the person has realized that and come to decided that he will stop running after this Aswada, and that person has come to Samadhi and he is Sothapanna. Of course, he will understand the Four Noble Truths, that is suffering reason for suffering, out of suffering, and the way out of suffering. And Aswadadino Nisarana is the major, it's probably the most important theory that is included, that's inherited or part of the Four Noble Truths. So it's very important to understand Aswadadino Nisarana and also Anicca Dukkha Aspada Adinava Nisarana can never be, Aspada can never be attained or in a satisfactory way because of Anicca Dukkha. There's a nature called Anicca Dukkha in the world. Anicca means we cannot control anything the way we want. And if we develop an attachment to those things, Raga, Dvesha, Moha, it will cause us dukkha, and that will lead to anartha. So these things you have to understand in little more detail. And in the second round, we will discuss them with more details. At the same time, there are some people who will understand at this level. Now, Lord Buddha said in one sutra, I forget the name of the sutra, he said people who are listening to Dhamma, interested in becoming Sotapanna, can be divided into four categories, he said. People with the highest level of wisdom, he said they are called uh, uh, Utkatisanna. The second group is called Vipatisanna. Third one is Neyya. Fourth one is Padaparana. So Utkatisanna people, he said, they will comprehend Dhamma within 7 days maximum and become Sotapanna. So it could be even within 1 hour, like Sopaka, Sumitra, Rahula, Visakha. They were people with lots of merits and lots of wholesome qualities. So their wisdom was very high. They comprehended Dhamma straight away, within 1 hour. Even Upatissa Kolita, who later became the Sariputta and Moggalla, they comprehended Dhamma within 1 hour and became Sotapanna. But for various reasons, Panchavagriya Bhikkhu took 21 days to comprehend Dhamma and become Sotapanna. So the last category, so Lord Buddha said the first category will be about roughly, about 10% of the people who are interested in Dhamma will fall into the first category, and they will take 7 days, and the second category will take 7 weeks, and the third category will take 7 months. Now, when we say 7 months, months in terms of Buddhism, this is a month will have 13 weeks. Month will have 28 days. 28 days, and one year will be 13 months in Buddha calendar. In Lord Buddha's days, week was 7 days, but 4 weeks, 28 days, is from one full moon for a day to the next full moon for a day, 28 days, that's 1 month. So first category within 7 days, second category within 7 weeks, third category within 7 months, and the last category is within 7 years. So he said roughly speaking, about 10% falls into the first category and 10% fall into the last category. The other 80% fall between the third category, second category, and the third category, which takes 7 weeks or 7 months. So most of you, I don't know, I can't really say. I'm only some people can, tell those things. I just assume that 80% of you, I mean, just working it out statistically, I could say, 80% of you are most likely to become Sotapanna, within maximum of 7 months. But few of you will become Sotapanna may have already comprehended this, what we are talking about, and become Sothapanna and come to Samadhi. So I will stop there.